Today we're going to be talking about soul, spirit, and body, differences between them, and the dynamic that plays out between them. The easiest way to get to this is going to be kind of describing the principle of each, what each is, essentially, what it is at its core. And for soul, that's going to be mind. Soul is essentially mind. Of course, we think of mind at a very particular scale, because we think of your mind or my mind. So we kind of want to not think of soul as something so simple, even though of course our minds are not simple. So sometimes we have that hang up. But soul is essentially the same thing as mind. Spirit, at its core, is substance. It is the, and again, same problem with thinking of soul at a very particular scale. Substance, when we think of substance, we think of a particular substance. That wouldn't be right to think of universal spirit as a particular substance. It would be the substantiating principle, right? Likewise, soul would be not the mentalizing principle, but it would be the mental principle that gives way to all particularities of mind as we experience it, right? Spirit is the substantiating principle. It is what gives substance to something. It is, at the universal scale, essentially the exact same thing as the ether. So it's not something that's spatial, because what is spatial is, manifest. But we'll get into that, because that'll be important for spirit's dynamic with body. Body, at the core, is form. It is the form of substance. So, spirit is going to kind of bridge the gap between soul and body, but there's not really a gap. I mean, spirit and body are essentially natures of the one existent thing, which ultimately boils down to mind, or soul. So, spirit, as the substantiating principle, is in essence the medium of manifestation, the medium by which and of which manifestation occurs. And manifestation would be the manifestation of bodies, forms, matter, images, the external world, the world that appears to us as external, right? That is the manifest world. Spirit is the substance by which the world is manifested, is the principle that substantiates the form. And all form is essentially a permutation or a modulation of that substantiating principle, right? Any variation in form is essentially just a varied modulation of that substantiating principle. So, this universal spirit can be thought of much like the ether, and it's not something that is like an ether wind or, what do they call it, luminiferous ether that's in space that has wind that you can measure and disprove via Michelson-Morley. That's really just not what the ether is. Actually, quantum mechanics seems to be kind of approaching ether with, 0-point fields, or a 0-point energy, but I digress. Spirit is essentially what gives rise to bodies. That's why spirit is usually referred to as breath, or something akin to breath. Even Norse mythology, when Odin, Vili, and Ve create Asker and Embla, one of them, I forget which, gives them kind of basically mind. One of them gives them spirit or breath. Breath specifically, I believe. I think the other one basically says something about appearance, but not super important. And in Greek, pneuma would mean breath. Latin, anima would be similar to this. The Sanskrit term prana would be pretty similar to this as well. Although I think usually when we think of spirit or some kind of esoteric energy like that, we kind of, yeah, we esotericize it. And really all it is substance. It's what substantiates the manifestation of our form. And our body is our form. The external world is form. Our body is essentially something that would be in the same category as the apparently external world. Of course, there's no actual external world. And it is the form, not necessarily of the ether, it'd be by the ether or by spirit. It is the form of the soul, because the soul is back of both of these things. And a soul is essentially a mind. It is if you want to think of mind as a universal principle, like a divine mind, the mind of the one, or maybe you want to say nous is directly posterior to the one. That's fine. It really doesn't make a difference. Then souls would be a kind of an individualization therefrom, or a particularization therefrom. And that's a really easy way to think of it, because you can think of mind on the universal scale, particularizing itself into a soul. And the way it does that is via conditioning, but that's a topic via another video, or for another video. You say the word via too much and you start to throw it in very weird places, but I digress. The soul has a substantiating principle by which it kind of generates its self-image. You could think of spirit literally as the kind of medium within the soul via or through which it generates its self-image or its form, which is its body. Although a particular body, as opposed to the entirety of body or the entirety of the imaginary world or the world as an image, is kind of the soul's self-conception opposed to its conception of externality, even though there is no true externality. That's why the body seems to be fully integrated in you know, the external world, despite, you know, you having one and me having one. There's very obviously a medium between bodies, and we all share a very intimate realm space with each other. But yeah, you can see why there's kind of a gap bridged by spirit, because spirit essentially substantiates soul, or the activity of the soul. But yeah, these aren't really different things. That should always be noted, is that spirit and body are essentially operations. Well, the body, formation or ideation or imagination or manifestation, these terms are essentially identical, is the operation of the soul, which is self-definition or self-manifestation. And spirit is just a kind of nature inherent to the soul as well. It's just a it's like how your own mind kind of has this inherent capacity for imagination on some level or another. It's there. It's a part of how your mind works. And everything that exists within reality must in some way be just a part of how reality is. It's not exterior to reality, that's for sure. So yeah, and then spirit is just the substance back of any manifested thing. So if you want to think of these things in terms of manifestation, you have soul as the unmanifest mental principle. You have spirit as the medium by which manifestation occurs. And then you have the body as the manifestation itself, which is the same thing as the form. Ernest Holmes had a very good system that was essentially this exact thing. Definitely my top inspiration, but he essentially switched where I'm putting spirit and soul. And the reason I would find that inaccurate is because spirit is always kind of referred to as a type of breath, a type of vitalizing and animating principle, or the medium. It's kind of referred to as a medium, whereas the term for soul for the Greeks was literally psyche, which is what we use for mind. And nous also kind of referred to mind, and we still kind of have some terms that, you know, pay homage to the word nous, although it's less common than psyche, of course. And, yeah, so that's why I place soul where I do, rather than spirit. The Holy Trinity, soul would be the Father, Spirit would be the Holy Spirit, of course, and the Son would be the body. This would be because, I mean, the Son is literally born of the Father in its image, right? And that is exactly what a body is. It is the image of the soul. And that was a very, very good system. I highly recommend this book, The Science of Mind. But yeah, that's the core, universal, underlying principle for soul, spirit, and body. Now, all of these things operate on both the universal and the particular scales. So, for instance, there is a universal soul. There is a kind of universal spirit, which you would call the ether, probably. And there is a particular scale for these things as well. And the particular scale would be, for the spirit, would be essentially the soul's use of the universal spirit, which essentially becomes the particular spirit. I am not sure how I would extrapolate that into some kind of esoteric, subtle energy, because when you have, a lot of people refer to spirit, vril, prana, any like chi, these things as a kind of subtle energy, but that essentially, or almost like electricity, just this subtle thing that's like coursing through you. But when you do that, when it is a manifested thing like that, it's literally, it's like tangible. It is essentially material. It is, you know, you may not call it material, but it is of the same principle as material things. It is manifest. When you're dealing with, I mean, metaphysics usually refers to unmanifest things. The soul, the mind in itself, and same with spirit in itself, is unmanifest, right? Well, spirit is kind of most manifest because form is manifest of spirit. So it's, you know, as Hermes said, unmanifest yet most manifest, but that's the same case with the soul. But the mind in itself is unmanifest. You can't point to it. You know, it operates, like, its nature is to materialize, you know, its activity. So, of course, you can't just point at matter and be like, or, you know, the imaginary or external world and be like, well, this is devoid of mind. It kind of is, but is an image in your imagination devoid of the imagination? Of course not. So it's not really, right? But you can't point to the mind in itself. You can point to images of the mind. Spirit, you can point to the manifestations that, you know, manifest through it. And the body, you can it's manifest. But you can't really point to the medium of manifestation itself. You know, I think Ken Wheeler is pretty accurate when he kind of refers to the ether as counterspatial. A lot of people kind of make fun of that term, but I think it's a very good term. It's not something that is spatially manifest. It's not something that spatiality, my apologies, is an attribute of manifestation. It is an attribute of the manifest world. So, yeah. Sometimes we get lost on tangents in these videos, but it's kind of important. But yeah, particularizations of the universal. That's a very important concept, because that's basically how anything particular arises. So, a particular body, I don't think a universal body is a very important consideration to make. But body is clearly kind of a whole different ballpark from spirit and soul, because it is essentially just the soul's self-objectification. If you've watched my video on subject-object dynamics, you will kind of understand what I'm talking about. If you haven't, I recommend it. It is probably the best way to understand how manifest reality comes to be. And I think there's a few topics that are very relevant to this that I should touch on in future videos. Off the top of my head, that'll be this kind of ontological ladder of subjectivity, which is how souls become particular as opposed to universal, why there are particular souls, and maybe some more about the ether. But there's people better at that than I am. That would be Theoria Apophasis. But yeah, quick recap. Soul is the mental principle. Spirit is the substantiating principle, substance. And body is the formative, or not the formative, the formed principle. It is the formation of the soul's activity, which manifests via spirit. So, I don't think there should be any arbitrary spirit that is like essentially a body, because I don't think that's what spirit or the substantiating principle is really getting at. It's not something that travels into a body to like possess it and animate it. The body is the animation. The spirit is the animating principle. It is what is animating it, which is, or essentially it's transmitting the activity of the soul. Although there's no transmission external from the soul to something. This is all occurring within the soul, believe it or not. But yeah, that's probably, I almost forgot to touch on that. Good thing I did. But the spirit is not something that enters into a body to animate it. It is how the body occurs as an animation. The body itself is an animation. The animating principle, I guess, would then be the soul, and spirit is essentially the medium via which animation occurs. The substantiating principle, all form can be kind of broken down just to base substance. But yeah, there's kind of this conception that there's this subtle energy that, like, I don't know, maybe carries the soul. That's not how this works. It's not how reality works. The spirit is not something tangible like that. It is the principle underlying your body as an animation. The external world, the imaginary world, is the animation of the universal spirit. Or I guess you could say the world soul, and the ether is the medium. But yeah, that should hopefully give you guys a pretty concise understanding of these things. This kind of trichotomy, it is very useful, but it's important to understand that the former, or the latter two, spirit and body, are essentially natures and operations of the former, of soul. the Holy Spirit and the Son are operations of the Father. You know, there's nothing external to the Father. You can kind of see this kind of trichotomy in, or at least the dichotomy between soul and spirit in Greek metaphysics and Indian metaphysics. Of course, I'm sure, you know, the trichotomy, including or extending to body, is accounted for. You can even see it in, like I said, Norse mythology, the Holy Trinity, although you can also think of the Son as the individuation or the individualization of the Father, which is a particular soul from the universal soul. I think that's a pretty good interpretation as well. But yeah, I hope you learned something. I hope that gives you guys a pretty good understanding and clears up some misconceptions. And until next time.